Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Immergence Show. Today, we are tackling a massive question. Is our entire digital world built on a house of cards? We're building incredible AI tools and decentralized systems, but the foundation of trust they're being built on is fragile and outdated. So, how do we fix it? Our guest today is the perfect person to answer that. A pragmatic leader who bridges the world of regulated fintech and deep tech cryptography. After building global identity and compliance systems at PayPal, Cam Gear is now the co founder and COO of Cryptid Technologies, where he is architecting a new, provable foundation for the internet. We'll be talking about why our current systems are failing, how a post-blockchain approach can create a new layer of provenance, and what this all means for the future of AI agents that can transact on our behalf. As we go, please drop your questions and thoughts in the comments, tag a colleague who needs to hear this, and let us know what you think. Cam, welcome to the show.
Nico, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here.
Amazing. Likewise, excited to have you. So, you have built an amazing career. I would love you to start off by sharing a bit more deeply about your background, your journey, how you started, how you got into this space, and what were some of the aha moments and lessons learned.
Well, I've been in a long time technology career in startups and big companies. One of the most transformational experiences for me was when I was at PayPal for the better part of 8 years. I led merchant onboarding product, which essentially was bringing new merchants into the PayPal platform to be able to take PayPal as a payment method for their business. And being a global company, that meant we had worldwide reach, doing business in over 200 countries. And what I came to realize was that I actually was in the business of establishing an organizational identity, meaning an identity for a business entity that had multiple actors in it. Business owners, perhaps if they're more sophisticated business, board of directors, beneficial owners, things of that nature, and all of those actors in a business entity have a responsibility and a role to play within the global financial system, especially when looking to combat anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist financing, and things of that nature. And it really led to understanding that, number one, the current state of trying to verify an identity, even a dozen years ago, wasn't great with the technology that we had at that point. And today, AI has only thrown, fuel on the fire with, deep fakes and synthetic identities and the like that really put the system at risk. So really started me, on a path to, do what product managers do, right? And that's ask why was that happening? And fundamentally digging down into that, it comes to the root of how trust and veracity, authenticity, if you will, has been established through the journey of the internet for the last 30 years, and why it's not sufficient for how we move forward.
Amazing. So you left PayPal and then
From there, I came across an organization called the Internet Identity Workshop, and where there was a worldwide virtual community trying to, ask these questions and solve some of the identity and security problems. At that point, I met my partners that have a deep background in creating some of the very first applied cryptographic libraries for managing reusable, verifiable credentials on the internet, and dealing with largely the identity of people. But what I've come to learn working with them over the last 5 years is that we need to go much, much deeper, even down into basically base silicon in understanding how chips are operating today with things called secure enclaves. They're in your phones and where your wallet and things like that are stored on your iPhone or your Android. And what were the assumptions, using a first principles approach? What were the assumptions that were made 30 years ago to, establish, secure links between different entities, whether they be, people, devices, APIs, and so forth? And that was where the whole realm of what is called PKI, public key infrastructure, or public key cryptography, came into play. And it served us very well for, driving how many trillions of dollars of commerce and value, the internet over the last 30 years. But more and more you're seeing, reports of breaches, theft, stealing of cryptocurrency, stealing of identities, all sorts of other, bad things that are out there. And don't kid yourself, the bad actors are probably the best at using the AI tools today. And as agentic AI comes on, where you're actually going to have, virtual entities transacting on your behalf in all aspects of your life, your education, your healthcare, your finances, even your emotional well-being, perhaps, getting to a point where there's a safer and more secure network is paramount.
Amazing. And you're involved with different organizations like Verida and Quai. That's how we met. Awesome. Thank you for sharing the overview. I would love to say hi to our amazing engaged audience. Thank you for being with us live. Felipe, Casey, Rick, Shada, and everyone else who's tuning in. Please write us a comment, say you're here, and share your comments and thoughts throughout. Hi, Sosa. Thank you for being here, everyone. And if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. We're trying to talk about this very, exciting topic of like the future, but it's also a bit complex. So I want to make sure we break it down for non-finance folks like myself, that, a lot of these terms might come as something new. So what you define as that PKI? Can you explain that a bit more for people
Sure.
who are not
Very
familiar?
simply, what most people know about PKI is that your username and password is an excellent example of public key cryptography, where you have a public key, your username, quite often an email, because it's meant to be unique, and it is essentially a way for you to share something with another party, where they can, decrypt on your a message that you send to them with their secret or your secret. Look at the way email works, right? Where if you get an email, you log into your account, that email was encrypted and sent over the internet, shows up in your inbox. You log into your email account with your password, and basically your password is decrypting the secure messages that had come into you for you to read. So that's a very simple example. There's some real challenges with that, and I think that's what we kind of want to get into next, if that's okay.
Yes, definitely. And saying hi to Yemi, Shadi, and Chris. They're excited about this topic. Yemi says this conversation is crucial for understanding what's changing the decentralized economy. And Chris is interested in the future of identity and self-custody with AI. in blockchain. Awesome. We're going to get into all of this. Cam, do you want to share your screen, and do you want me to bring that
sure.
up?
Let me see. Am I doing that okay now?
Cool. Yeah, it's up. So let's talk about, why you think that this existing PKI username password that we're all used to is not going to be sustainable, especially considering the quantum computing advancement that are happening. Maybe explain a bit more on that.
Yeah, so very simply, as I mentioned, AI is here and it is exploding. PQC, post quantum computing, is shorthand for saying that the algorithms that have been used to encrypt data, messages, secure connections, and things of that nature have been, have served us well for the last 30 years. But they're quickly getting to the point where those algorithms are going to be able to be cracked by quantum computers. And so what that means is that what you think is a secure connection can easily be hacked. And so, we're at a point where most major companies are looking at their infrastructure about how to, prepare for that. And as little as 5 years ago, PQC, post quantum computing, they didn't think the computers were going to be built and powerful enough, you know for any time soon, like decades into the future. Things have been moving so rapidly that NIST, the government standards body, does a lot of research in applied cryptography, and others, many other experts in the industry are saying that is a very likely outcome by the end of the decade. And so if we think of the trillions of dollars in both commerce and in national security that are essentially relying on public key infrastructure and public key cryptography today, are at real risk. And so how do we break down that problem and come up with a path forward? Then AI and the promise of agentic AI, where there are literally going to be billions or trillions of actors, the current model just isn't scalable for moving forward. And so we have some ideas about how to address that.
And I'm curious, you mentioned, there are, like, of course, there are two-factor authentication and there are other ways, verifiable credentials. But I heard from you that this doesn't solve the full problem. What do you think that is the, kind of the critical aspect that we need to address when we are trying to, solve for this?
Yeah, I'm going to get into that in a bit, and it really is how we manage identifiers. So how do you locate, or discover a device, an entity, digital representation of a person, an API endpoint, and all of those sorts of things. And I think that's really the place to start. I do want to take a pause and jump back in time to 1714 for a historical example of insight and innovation. And the great part about this story is that it actually relates to how we live our lives today, fundamentally about how the world works. And this comes down to something that was called the longitude problem. This is in the days of sailing ships and empires trying to explore the world, and how would they figure out where they were on the planet. It quickly became pretty obvious that knowing where you were, east or west, was really a function of time, because at that point the consensus was that the Earth was round and that it had 360 degrees in a circle, and then you could use an equation for time to figure out where you were in the difference between one point and another. The trick came from how do you actually do that? And Parliament in the UK actually put up 20,000 pounds in 1714 pounds sterling value, so a ton of money at the time, to motivate the community to try to come up with an answer. And the great part about this story is, this is an outlier. John Harrison was a man who was in the north of England, a cabinet and clockmaker, and not a member of the Royal Society, who was coming up with an alternative method by which you could solve this problem. And he was competing against the likes of Sir Isaac Newton and Halley and, the leading lights in science of the day. And it was a very simple insight that he had. If he could measure accurately enough the difference in time between a fixed point, which we have now known to come to know as the prime meridian in the UK, and you could have two clocks essentially that could keep time, one accurate for time in the UK, and then as ships would do every noon, they would take a sighting to reset their clocks to noon each day. They would know how far east or west they were. This key insight and the ability to measure it is fundamental to how commerce still works today. The GPS system that we all use on our phones relies on this premise of time differential. So it's we feel like our approach to solving this PKI problem is similar to Mr. Harrison. And as you can see in a very brief timeline there, from the time he developed his first prototype in 1730, it wasn't really until 1765 that he'd sort of mastered what would be a long-term and scalable solution. And I mentioned that because the Cryptid team have been in and around this problem of PKI and cybersecurity and applied cryptography for about the same length of time. And we feel like we're coming up to the point where some of the ideas we have are going to manifest themselves in a way where they can be scalable and really solve a problem. So I'm going to pause here and throw out a commercial message. This is, if anybody has seen me speak, one of the things I'm particularly passionate about is trust is an outcome. It's not a product. It is not a service. It is not something that you can own. It is something that you earn. And it goes up and down, right? It is a very ethereal quantity or quality that needs to be established and maintained basically with every interaction. And so when we apply this into the idea of agentic AI and the things where we're headed with technology, it's a really important principle to keep in mind, because it's not a one and done. So much has happened in the world of fintech over the last decade, where you take a selfie and a picture of your driver's license and you onboard to your next greatest fintech app, and you think you're sort of one and done and on your way. But we know full well that that process is flawed and easily compromised, and it's very easy to break that trust in that context. So trust is something that needs to be managed and maintained over a long period of time.
Love that. And we did have a couple of episodes talking about this, and one of them was with Zach, who is in our audience now. And Zach and Anton talked extensively about this. So I love this topic. Thank you for bringing it up.
Excellent. Thanks. Okay, so moving on, the next thing I want to get into is, as we were prepping for the call, we talked about provenance. What is provenance, and why is that important? Provenance very simply is, chronology of ownership. If you think about, why is the Mona Lisa in the Louvre so valuable? Because there's a stack of parchment paper that says that, it moved from the brush of Leonardo to, current ownership in the museum, and it conveys authenticity, attribution, legal rights to use or license, and from our perspective, provenance accrues market value over time. And where this is really important is that as we get further into understanding how to move through this world of agentic AI, that provenance and your ability to attest to ownership and authenticity is critical. So from our perspective, what's that?
Sorry, I was just saying the folks that have been in the blockchain world, that has been one of our top, concerns, especially like even in the tangible world, in the commerce, proof that we could have with the NFTs. It all use the concept of provenance. So now we're seeing what's next, what's after blockchain.
So this is where, again, our vision of how we have a very clear picture of the way, the world is going to operate by the end of the decade. And what's very interesting is that, we had this point of view starting in 2020, 2019 even, and our view hasn't changed. And in fact, going back to Mr. Harrison's timeline, people have been iterating on these problems and have tried a lot of different things, but haven't yet got the result that we really need for long-term safety and security and scalability. And that is because I think really understanding some really important network principles and what we call metastable networks, where different entities, actors, devices, APIs, AI agents, what have you, they're going to operate in what we call a metastable network. They have the ability to join and leave randomly, connect with a myriad of other actors that are out there, often changing their network addresses. And it's really easy for people to understand. What I mean by this today is that, hey, if you pick up your phone and you send somebody a WhatsApp message on the other side of the world, you have no idea what IP address they're connected to. And today they're in India, and tomorrow they could be in Eastern Europe or in Brazil or something like that. And I don't need to know that, right? I just need to know that, hey, I want to send a message to this person, and they're either online and can respond in real time or not. And the network kind of takes care of itself. It takes care of all of those things. And so the idea around doing that for technology related entities, thinking specifically around AI agents, this concept of an identifier needs to be established and persist over a long period of time. The challenge, I'm going to talk a little bit about identifiers today. The challenge with using what we consider to be sort of usernames and passwords today, if you think of usernames as identifiers, they actually are the second half of a secret that decrypts messages. And if you use that to also identify yourself there, and those keys get compromised, then there is a need to essentially reestablish your public identity. And if you do that with a new public key, then you're losing all of your history associated with those interactions that you may previously have had in a safe and secure connection. And so tying the threads together of provenance, our point of view is that by having that long-term connectivity with a unique identifier that does not have public key material, and that's sort of the innovation that we've come up with, is how to isolate that and to have them in what you see here, these 3-state links, either valid, invalid, or partially valid. There are ways for people and software entities to rediscover and reconnect to your entity, whether that's your digital persona or your API, in a way that can be done unilaterally, meaning that there does not need to be a sort of offline coordinated activity in order to reconnect. And that's another thing we see as a core principle here, because there's no way that AI agents with the volume they're going to operate at are going to be able to tolerate that from a scalability standpoint. Any questions you want me to jump in?
I was wondering, if Dan asked about, are there any easy to use open source application for pre-QE, so anyone can use can secure cloud upload for backup, like Google Drive or OneDrive?
Well, if you remember your guest a couple of weeks ago, Liam, he was all about saying it, not at all, right? He is all about having safe and secure storage at home in a way that is outside of the platforms, because listen, the self-interest of Google, Microsoft, Meta, what have you, is not really in your interest. And there's time and again we have seen that, and part of why we're going after this PKI for AI is really to enable the safety and security for yourself, and to get away from being the input for the massive platforms from which they can monetize you.
Thank you. And we have another comment from Felipe. I don't know if it's a good time to talk about it, but he's asking, how does Cryptid's post-blockchain model handle data availability and consensus for state proof? And what are the trade-offs compared to a traditional ledger?
For one thing, it does not specifically ask for consensus, right? This is not a I'm looking at Zach's comments here. So consensus is not required in this case, right? We have what we call our provenance logs, which log your interactions into a table. Essentially, it is like a blockchain, but it's not something that requires consensus from another party. And each entry uses lock and unlock scripts. Each entry is entered into your provenance log and signed by a private key. So that part of the PKI hasn't gone away. You'll have a private key to sign things. But the history behind those events in a provenance log are the things that we see establishing your long-term history, and therefore really sort of the fundamental unit of if you can see that my sharing here. Am I sharing still? The fundamental unit of digital identity is this verifiable key history, and not key pairs.
Thank you for the question, Felipe, and thanks for the answer, Cam. Do you want to get into Zach's question? Can you explain the concept of metastable VLADs and PLOGs and why metastability is so important to the network?
Yeah, sure. So the VLADs, the very long-lived addresses, as we call them here, as the identifiers, allow for unilateral rotation of your keys, your public keys, your private keys, without having to break, that long-term view into your history. And so, where I see this as being really important is, as if your keys were ever compromised, if a bad actor got a hold of your keys, which then also could potentially give the bad actor access to your data or your email or what have you. Um, uh, when you notice that, you can unilaterally rotate that key and enter in a new private key and take back control of your key history. And you can prove that because you have previous entries, uncompromised previous entries in your key history, that prove that you actually had control over that provenance log, prior to the malicious event.
Zach, I hope this answered your question. If not, let us know. Awesome. And so let's get into, so we have a quick question from Shadi. Could this technology also be used to automate and enforce royalty payments for artists whose work is used to train AI models?
Yeah, absolutely. This was one area where we've done a ton of exploration, and the idea is that um, it's a way to enforce a licensing model, so that those that value can be accrued to the artist. And what a consumer of the artist's property would need to have is a mutually signed or mutually authenticated agreement, which then would be logged in each one of their provenance logs, so the artist and the licensee, uh, so that there is a defined mutual agreement between the parties, and whatever remuneration is negotiated for that would be able to be executed as well. Based on my payments experience at PayPal, I also think there's a ton of opportunity here to bring these concepts into actual payment flows and execution of financial transactions, both from a compliance standpoint between the counterparties that are executing a trade or a transaction, and then the movement of value or money in and of itself. And especially with crypto and stable coins, sort of the dual horse in the team that's pulling us along here between AI and crypto. We need this more than ever.
So how would it tangibly be used? Are we going to get into that in your presentation?
Yeah. So ideally, let's see. With our product BetterSign, we actually have it's an open API. It's actually licensed under what's called a business source license, meaning that you're free to use it and develop a product, but when you put it into commercial application, there is a license for a 2-year period, and then it automatically converts to an Apache 2.0 fully open source license. And so we see this as a way for bridging the challenges in the open source movement, where developers haven't been rewarded for their effort, but we also really believe in the open source movement, so that as we develop things further, new versions will remain in a business source for a period of time, but the existing licensees will have a fully open source, non-revenue generating license in like a 24-month period. So as I'm showing here, these BetterSign can be incorporated in any kind of application that you're working on with provenance logs, logging these key activities. And it's been natively developed for the distributed hash table and communicates natively over libp2p protocol. And we see that as a sort of way to bootstrap or go to market. I see somebody put a go to market question in there with the developer community. This is a very technical concepts, technical capabilities for frontline developers who are looking to build applications that are post quantum resistant, safe and secure, get away from the challenges from the legacy PKI models, and set up to embrace agentic AI and long-term commerce for the future.
Amazing. So yeah, Felipe's question was whether you're going to be focused on developers with open source tools, or do you target large enterprises? Are you going to go after it?
It's no secret that for a company to remain economically viable, we definitely need to have enterprise revenue. But time and again, it's a well-worn path that the way to get there is look at the frontline engineers that are working in either scrappy startups, as Zach said, or business units, development units inside of enterprise companies, and they will embrace the tools and develop great things for their employers, and it gets to a point where it now needs to be brought in as an enterprise product. Slack is one of the best examples of that. It started as a sort of bootstrap thing for developer community, and then it became so ubiquitous that ultimately Salesforce paid a lot of money for it. So that is definitely because the needs are so urgent and so pervasive that we feel it's there are many channels to explore and embrace here. What we know best are the front end developers that are needing to bring better security and better identity management into their products, and that's where we're going to start the journey. And we know we have some folks on the call who've been working with us for a while, and it's proving out to be just as we've claimed. And so we're looking forward to pushing this further. We're going to have more public activities coming through the balance of the year, and welcome people's exploration and further questions about what we have to offer.
What's the timeline on this launch?
Yeah, so the prototypes of BetterSign and provenance logs are available now. We'd love developer feedback, and we expect to be pushing that out for broader use by the end of the year, where we'll actually be having a hosting service for hosting provenance logs. We definitely are not interested in becoming any kind of centralized authority. We don't feel like we need to be the only ones out there that are providing these kinds of logging services. You can certainly do it internally with your own technology stack. What's particularly interesting around the concept of decentralization in and of itself, which we hadn't touched on yet. Decentralization is really about power. It is not about technology. This is about having the autonomy, the ability to do things in your own self-interest. And the best example we can give you that, email is probably the most decentralized technology that we have today. Now, you may have, 100,000 or a million email messages in your Gmail or Yahoo Mail over time, but literally because of the format that it's in, you could download your entire email history and take your Gmail history into something like Fastmail, or host it yourself or what have you, and that's what we're talking about. We have the ability to do that, particularly around key management, key history, and the establishment of provenance over your personal identity or your data, or whatever it is that your application is managing.
Okay, cool. We do have another question from Felipe. Can you hear me, Cam?
I sure can, and I'm reading his message right now. What's the biggest regulatory hurdle to get, to get mainstream financial institutions to adopt this new model for compliance? Well, what's great is that as part of my experience at PayPal, I've been on a journey to really understand what's happening in the world of crypto and stablecoins and the regulatory environment there, in something that's called the travel rule, where counterparties need to be identified and proven to have basically KYC, know your customer credentials, in order to transact in a compliant way. And in fact, it's an area that I've spent a lot of time in on this journey, and don't believe that a lot of the current solutions that are out there really are sufficient, because they still have this problem where they've been binding public keys to the identifiers, which will continue to lead to compromise. And by using our very long-lived addresses, our VLADs, and our provenance logs, we can get away from that. And so where I see this going is meeting the regulatory requirements of a compliance officer, or BSA, Bank Secrecy Act officer, who is mandated both by law and the board, or their executive leadership in a financial company, and give them tools that are going to, number one, better protect the counterparties in commerce and trade, and number two, reduce the fraud and the risks that are built in systemically today, which they already know exist, right? As I mentioned in some of the comments around doing your KYC, your selfie and driver's license picture for your latest fintech app is just not sufficient. And I'm in dialogue with these folks, this community, on a weekly basis, and understand that they are really under pressure with what AI has brought to bear, and subsequently the rapid advancement of regulatory legislation in the United States with the Genius Act and the Project Crypto, and things that are driving day-to-day changes in the SEC and the CFTC, the Commodities Futures Exchange or Commission, which has been regulating a lot of the crypto activities over the last 15 years or so. And the United States will, ideally by the end of the year, but more likely by the middle of next year, really have a much more solid foundation of crypto regulation and policy. And I will tell you, the people that are putting that together are very interested in looking forward and what technologies are going to be able to be applied to combat the known risks that are today, and yet still embrace the spirit of the law and as much to the letter of the law as we can, with identifying counterparties in a way that is safe and secure in this, especially this agentic AI commerce world. And that's really throwing them for a loop where basically, we see it as that you're going to grant an AI agent power of attorney to execute transactions on your behalf. And, where does that all tumble down in the law and the world of regulation? So that's something we're paying particularly close attention to.
An interesting time. Yeah, people are already using Perplexity and some other tools for, doing transactions on their behalf. I don't know. And sometimes they get surprised what type of transactions happen. But yeah, it's an interesting time and we need to be prepared. Awesome. Another question from Shada this time. Beyond finance and AI, what's one unexpected industry you believe will be completely transformed by a universal provable provenance layer?
Healthcare, 100%. When you think about your personal medical data and the way in which you need to share and protect, the insights that's in that raw data, it's not being met today, and if we expect to, have even more technology being applied to our day-to-day lives, there needs to be a better answer there, and we feel that this is one that can really help make that happen.
Sorry, I don't know, my connection is coming in and out, so I'm not sure if you can hear me now.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
All right. So do you want to continue your presentation? And then I do have a few other questions at the end.
Yeah, really, I've just encouraged people to check out our GitHub at github.com/cryptidtech, and it will be a place where you can learn more about provenance logs and BetterSign, and hope you guys give it a try.
That's very exciting. I can't wait for the public launch. Awesome. We do have another question from Yemi. How can PQC and AI agents ensure that decentralized data like digital product passports remain secure and accessible only to authorized users, even in a decentralized framework?
That is exactly what our provenance logs are designed to do, and the delegation capability that we have within BetterSign. So BetterSign has the ability to essentially delegate authority down through a chain, so that authorized actors only are allowed to essentially have access to your encrypted data, whatever that data may be. In this case, a digital representation of a passport, and that is proven. So when a request comes in, me as the owner holder of the passport will be able to sign that request with my private key, and that will be logged into the provenance log, and also that event will also be logged in to provenance log of the recipient of the request. And it's a way to really then now get into some of the cybersecurity and IT operations aspects of this, where you're getting into authentication and authorization flows, and you can one component that we haven't really talked about yet today is our capabilities in zero knowledge proofs. Zero knowledge proofs for the folks at home are mathematical equations and events that say that you can prove something is true without knowing what the underlying data is that establishes that fact. And it's a bunch of crazy math, I will tell you that, but it actually works. And our ZKP capabilities, our zero knowledge proof capabilities, have the ability to do fine-grained access control and management to Yemi's question, specifically for cases like that. And it's all done in a decentralized way. You don't need any kind of centralized authority.
Back.
Oh, thanks, Rick.
Hear me?
Yep, you're back. I can still hear you.
All right. His connection today is not helping, but we're here. Awesome. Thank you for your response. And I do have a question about the future. Kind of like, what's your boldest prediction for the future of digital provenance over the next 3 years?
Yeah, over the next 3 years, I think we're coming down to the point where some of the assumptions and the first principles that we started the decade with around the need for authenticity and provenance are really coming to be more accepted, better accepted as a method by which we can manage our digital lives. There were a lot of skeptics 5-6 years ago, and more people are coming to say the same things in the online forums and in our identity meetings and so forth. And we feel that the concept of provenance-based identity through these cryptographic capabilities is really going to become a standard. And I'll make a comment about standards. Standards are great. They often are machinations in political bodies that put a 3 or 4 letter acronym or TLA against a capability, but something doesn't really become a standard unless it's used. And that's why we're really focused on the front end developer experience and building tools that we know will solve problems, and we're not spending our time in rooms with colleagues arguing about whose widget is better, and trying to get our name on a whiteboard or a white paper. We're putting tools in the hands of developers and letting the market decide. And we've heard some of our hypotheses here, why we feel like this is a really great direction to go. And sure, we want to win, but it's going to be the developers that decide, and not political influencers.
Right. The product-led growth is the way to go for sure. And especially in this day and age where building has become so easy, and it's just a matter of like finding the right niche to tackle and having the right subject matter expertise. Awesome. And so you mentioned the GitHub. What else is coming up that people can, like, is there an event that you guys are planning, or a website that they can check out? Any more information for those who are interested?
Go to cryptid.tech. We'll have more coming. We aren't ready to make any kind of announcement as of yet, but as you said, we work very closely with Quai.ai, building out public AI, personal AI infrastructure, and several other organizations. One of our co-founders is also very much involved in the LIP P2P project, and some of the other Web3 companies that are out there.
And where can people find you and support you personally?
Best way, first contact on LinkedIn. I open to meeting up with people all the time. I've got a Calendly link in my profile, and happy to have a conversation going down any one of these avenues.
Really exciting. Thank you so much for your insights, Cam. This was awesome. Thanks to our amazing engaged audience for their questions, comments. Thank you, Dan, Ritika, Shada, Yemi, Rick, Yemi again. Zach, I'm so excited for his great product. He was on the show. Definitely go check out his episodes. Ian, Sosa, Chris, and Shadi, and Casey, and Felipe. Thank you all for your engaged comments. And for those who will be watching the recording, we're grateful for you as well. We'll be back next week on Tuesday at 12 p.m. EST with another great episode for you all. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Cam. Take care.
Nico, thanks again. I really enjoyed it. It's been a great experience, and really appreciate all the effort you put into making this happen.
Of course, my pleasure. It was awesome. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye now.